I became aware of how erratic life can be as Lucas and I was sitting in the little hotel room that evening. My spouse, Ethan, had been away for several months in another city, and I was already experiencing anxiety. I missed him, of course. But it was more than that. His lack of interest and concern for the lonely evenings was the true issue. And it was tearing me down. How could I have known that we would be stranded in a small hotel room with just one bed if I asked my stepson Lucas to take me to his dad? Let me tell you everything from the beginning because I had no idea what would happen next. I can assure you that the ending of this story will surprise you. Please subscribe to my channel so that I can continue to share more amazing true stories like this one with you. Also, remember to watch this video through to the end and like it because it will be a really interesting story. Please hit the like button to show your support. That morning, as I was leaving the house, I quickly checked myself in the mirror. I felt tense, but I still looked good even though Ethan was gone, leaving me alone. However, even those feelings weren't enough anymore. They didn't make me happy. In the kitchen, Lucas was finishing his breakfast when I called out to him. I know you're starting college at the end of the summer, but you still need to work on your driving. Come on, take me to your dad. He looked up at me with his typical mischievous grin. All right, stepmom, teasingly, but only if you tell dad to buy me a better car for the summer. We'll talk about it, I replied, pushing him out the door. I just wanted to finish the trip, but I had no idea that it wouldn't go as planned. After nearly 2 hours of driving, I was fiddling with my phone in the back seat while Lucas sang along to an odd song on the radio and made amusing remarks that made me laugh. Suddenly, the car made a terrible noise, like a hiss, and just stopped. What's going on? I asked, trying not to sound too worried. I think the car broke down, Lucas said, pulling over to the side of the road looking frustrated. So there we were stuck in the middle of nowhere. The phone signal was weak, and there was no one around to help. We spent the next 2 hours calling every mechanic we could find, trying to fix the car. We tried to call every mechanic we could find, but the car wouldn't budge. Eventually, we had no choice but to admit it. We had to spend the night at the nearest hotel. At the motel's front desk, Lucas was chatting with the receptionist while I stood behind him. Frustrated, if Ethan finds out about this, he'll be so mad, I thought. But strangely in that moment it didn't seem to matter so much. Deep down I knew tonight was going to change everything before this story gets even stranger. Make sure you subscribe to my channel and turn on the alerts, trust me. You won't want to miss the rest of this by the end. I'd love to see your support in the comments and with those like. We finally got to the room and opened the door. To my expectations instantly fell. The room was small, barely big enough to move around in, with just one bed, a nightstand, and a flickering light overhead that made everything feel gloomy. The ceiling seemed low, the AC barely worked, and the only window faced the parking lot. Is it I who mumbled? Feeling disappointed, Lucas stepped in behind me laughing. What were you expecting? A 5-star hotel. We're only here for one night. So relax. His playful tone and cheeky grin only made me more irritated. But I couldn't deny that there was something about Lucas's carefree attitude excited me. I wasn't sure what it was, but it was exciting. It's so hot in here, I said, touching the back of my neck. I think I need a shower or I'll faint. Lucas casually threw himself onto the bed and lay flat on his back. This is your space, Isabella. Do whatever you need to feel comfortable. I stared at him for a moment, but I quickly pushed the thought aside because he was Ethan's son after all. My stepson. I entered the bathroom and slammed the door behind me. For a while, even though my hair was plastered to my skin from the heat, I still looked wonderful as I gazed at my image in the mirror. I still felt that spark, so I turned on the shower and let the water run, hoping that it would wash away the mess of emotions that were building inside of me. I'm 47 years old, and I thought that Lucas was no longer a child. He's 22 and about to start college. And here we are stuck in this small motel room together for a few days. The thought was both troubling and exciting in a way that I couldn't fully understand. I got in this hotel room with your son and don't know how to feel. I thought of Ethan and wanted to surprise you. The steam from the shower calmed the bathroom, and while my mind was racing with thoughts of Lucas's smile and his carefree attitude, it was stirring something inside of me. After a while, I decided to go downstairs for dinner to get my mind straight. The restaurant was small but cozy, fitting the simple setting. I ordered a light meal and a glass of wine, hoping it would help me unwind. The sun had set, and the street lights outside the motel were softly glowing as I sat there. And I couldn't stop thinking about what was happening upstairs. I wondered what Lucas was doing right now. I thought someone as full of energy as him probably wasn't having much fun being stuck in that tiny room. But his easygoing attitude, so casual and carefree, was driving me crazy in a way I couldn't understand. I took one final look at my plate before making my way upstairs. I unlocked the door and walked gently up, attempting to calm myself. It was the last thing I expected to see when I walked in. For a moment, I hesitated at the door, unsure of what to do inside, feeling a mix of emotions. And I couldn't take my eyes off Lucas, who had just gotten out of the shower and was lying on the bed in only a robe. Completely relaxed, his robe was half open, revealing his slender, athletic body, his damp hair falling over his forehead, and a slight grin on his lips like he was lost in a dream. "What are you doing? That's Ethan's son, Isabella," I told myself, but my gaze kept going to the area of his robe that had fallen open. And I noticed that something warm was stirring inside. The cramped space made matters worse because there was only one bed. So I was forced to sleep next to him or spend the night in the chair, and in this heat. Sitting in a chair seemed impossible. I entered the room slowly, and the sound of Lucas's steady breathing filled the room. I took a deep breath and tried to concentrate, but my mind was racing, making it difficult to think properly. I need to gather myself. I assumed this was just a one-night situation and that it wouldn't matter. I moved closer to the bed and stared at Lucas, whose innocent smile only made my already perplexed thoughts worse. I sat on the edge of the bed, wondering how I would survive the night, until a gentle sound woke me up in the middle of the night. I came here to surprise Ethan, but now that I'm in this situation, I need to remain sensible and maintain control. I opened my eyes just enough to glance around the room and noticed Lucas moving in the bed. He appeared to be half asleep, stroking his hair and gently scratching his head. I found myself observing him, but I kept my eyes open just enough to act as though I was still exhausted on the inside. Even though I could feel everything clearly, my heart began to race as I attempted to pretend I was still asleep and felt his gaze on me. He was watching me closely. I kept up the act, keeping a sleepy look on my face and staying still. But inside I was wide awake slowly. Lucas began to unhook the belt of his robe. As it loosened, the robe slid off his shoulders, revealing more of his fit body. I couldn't help but notice how his muscles moved. It sent a rush of heat through me. I couldn't control what was happening. And strangely, part of me didn't want to stop it. Lucas picked up a pair of shorts from the wardrobe, glancing back at me as he did. It felt like he was trying to figure out if I was awake. His looks made me even more excited. I was doing my best to hide how I felt. But at the same time, I let myself feel everything after putting on his shorts. Lucas did come back to bed instead. He sat on the chair in the corner of the room just watching me being observed so closely made me feel both nervous and something I couldn't explain. I kept my eyes shut, pretending to be asleep. But how long could I keep up the act? Finally, I couldn't hold back any longer. I sat up, and when our eyes met, I let my emotions show. "You're making me so excited, Lucas." "I don't know, Isabella. We've been living under the same roof for a while now, ever since my dad left. The more time we spend together, the more I feel for you. You might not know it, but sometimes I can't hide how much I care about you right now," I said softly, realizing that nothing would ever be the same again. Lucas blinked for a moment before taking a deep breath. His voice was low but steady as he spoke. This feels like a dream because Lucas's comments took me by surprise. But they also stirred something deep within me. He didn't avert his gaze, and his honest, passionate eyes captured my attention. We sat quietly for a moment before I pursed my lips slightly and looked at him. "I need to get up early to fix the car," he said, although it sounded like he was trying to convince himself. "But right now I can't take my eyes off you, Isabella." I've never felt this way before. My heart raced. I moved to the edge of the bed and sat down in the chair in front of him, my eyes never leaving his. The energy between us was so strong that it didn't need words. "Lucas," I said softly with a mix of curiosity and challenge in my voice. "Are we talking about the same thing?" Lucas stared at me, his expression deepening as if he wanted to feel this moment rather than talk about it. He didn't answer, but his eyes spoke everything. That's when I realized there was no turning back. As I looked into his eyes, a wave of boldness and desire filled me. And the mix of doubt and excitement in his eyes only pushed me further. Taking a deep breath, I spoke again, my voice steady but firm. "Lucas," I said, catching his full attention when I came into the room, "you were asleep. Your robe was open, and I couldn't take my eyes off you. It affected me more than I thought. We can't hide from how we feel, we both know that." As my words hung in the air, I took a step forward and slowly stood up. His gaze followed me, and I could see his breath quickening. I couldn't stop the excitement rushing through me. My fingers moved to the ribbon on my dress, and as I slowly untied it, I could hear his breathing change with every movement I made. "I guess," I whispered softly, "we need to figure things out, Lucas." I carefully unzipped the back of my dress, and it slid off my shoulders, falling to the floor. The cool air again against my skin made the heat inside me grow even stronger. The look in his eyes said everything, with surprise, admiration, and desire. He couldn't fight the stillness between us. It felt like a connection now. Our breaths mixing without breaking eye contact, I stepped closer to him and whispered, "We'll see if we're talking." Regarding the same subject, Lucas's eyes never left me. His feelings were intense and powerful. Suddenly, without turning away from me, he got up and turned on the room light. The warm light filled the room as he stepped over and closed the door. My heart pounded. It seemed as though time had stopped and there were only the two of us. As he approached me, my breathing quickened. He seemed to be studying my gaze, but at the same time, he knew the silent pull between us. When he got closer, his hands found my waist, and the warmth of his touch felt like an electric shock running through me. Without saying a word, he leaned in, his eyes fixed on my lips. I didn't resist. I couldn't. Everything about this felt natural, like it was meant to happen. When his lips touched mine, all the tension inside me faded away. His kiss was soft and curious but carried a clear intensity in my hands as I moved to his shoulders, feeling their strength and warmth as he held me close. The space between us disappeared as our breaths mixed. That moment felt like everything we'd both been holding back burst out. Lucas's energy met the deep passion I'd been feeling for so long. It was the beginning of something both terrifying and exciting. That night there was no hiding what we felt for each other. I let myself fall back onto the bed, my body tired but my mind racing. My breath was still shaky and my foot brushed across the fabric of my dress on the floor. I could feel Lucas's gaze on me, a steady and intense focus in his eyes. A moment later, he knelt down and picked up my dress. His fingers lightly brushed over the spot where my foot had been. Even that simple gesture sent a rush of heat through me as he held the dress for a moment. I saw a moment of hesitation on his face, but it quickly changed to determination. He tossed the clothes aside, and his hand moved to the edge of the bed slowly. He climbed onto the mattress, his movements careful and purposeful as he got closer to me. The look on his face showed his feelings, part eagerness, part intense desire. As I lay on the opposite side of the bed, I looked up at the ceiling, but I could see Lucas's face, his hand brushing back his hair, and I could tell by his eyes what he was feeling. He was red in the face, excited, and so happy. I could see how much energy he was putting all into it. And I heard that he was out of breath. I felt my heart race, my breathing quickened, and I realized that the space between us was almost gone. It felt like everything had built up to this point, and there was no turning back. Lucas said, his voice tremulous, each syllable a deep breath, "I'll never forget this hotel." He said, "I really don't want my father to sell the car anymore." And then he lay down next to me, closed his eyes, and waited for his breathing to slow down. His hands were a little shaky, and his body was tense, his muscles tightening with each movement, making him more cautious. The following morning, Lucas came in to tell me that the car was fixed and that we needed to pick up Ethan and head to the city where he was on his trip. I was exhausted and lacked the strength to say anything because my legs were shaking. And I didn't even realize when I fell asleep. I felt sad and confused, but I was also excited as I looked at Lucas's glance and his movements. Everything about him affected me so much that I couldn't tell what would happen next or whether I was excited or confused.